either.
Hey,
Go ahead and start.
That's a stack. All right, you're slick.
so I apologize, commissioners. We were waiting for the YouTube stream to be able to be streamed. So we can open the work session now. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. First up on our list is an agenda review.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks, Chair Banks. So we have the revolving calendar in front of you. I just want to make a note that March 20th work session has been canceled, and so we're missing that date on the calendar. The next one will be on March 27th. Right now, that's an evening meeting, and we have, besides the agenda review, two other agenda items, one being an overview of the economic opportunities analysis that is ongoing right now through the Community Development Department, and then we have 20 minutes right now set aside that may be a little bit longer, depending on how much conversation there is from the board about Measure 110 replacement, and the sheriff will be here to kind of walk through what our plans are to get organized moving forward. And that's after an AOC meeting that'll happen next Monday, where there'll be an overview of Measure 110 revision, as well as some conversations by region about implementation elements. And we're already, just so your board knows, we're already there has been conversations ongoing with stakeholders throughout the development of the 110 process. Those continue, but now we're going to have to get into the details of how to actually make the implementation work. I don't know, is that fair? Sure.
That's fair.
And then I just want to make a note for the April 3rd meeting, we do have the CBH update, and then we also have a conversation about short-term rental caps. So if your board wants to add any topics, as I always say, let us know.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Thompson.
Well, okay. I can't be here March 27th because I'm doing the Land Conservation and Development Commission. And it's not like they used to say in Detroit, one monkey don't stop the show. That's absolutely true. I can't do two things at once. So if there's a way to adjust the schedule to make it at the time when I'm not at LCDC, I'd be grateful. And I understand the work has to go on. So just say that. The other thing is, we were talking a little bit about how I go to AOC, and what I'm trying to do there is a twofold task. One, I'm trying insofar as possible, both at AOC and all of the other liaisons I have, to represent the specific interests of Clatsop County. I also want to step back and look at the whole, so that we in Clatsop County the sheriff does an excellent job with this county manager, with everybody. We do an excellent job, and you as the Council of Forest Trustees looking at the whole. So that means that Clatsop County is not only looking at what works for us, but we have that broader context and that teamwork mentality, which hopefully will result in strong alliances that see more resources come to the county. I mean, I am a straight up business person in some ways. What does it get us in dollars and cents? It's lovely to be happy together, but how do we have what we need, especially when we're looking, in spite of your efforts, what happened with the habitat conservation plan? So I'd like us to think, County Manager, I don't know if it's part of the strategic planning process. I know we've talked about making some adjustment in staff support and briefings. I think that's an excellent step. But if we as a board are contemplating how we can use our liaisons and our capacity for doing teamwork to support Clatsop County's well-being, I'd like us to have that lens.
Yeah, Commissioner Thompson, I think that could be a conversation point for the board as part of a future work session too, is just to talk through that and what that means specifically. And I'll put that on the list and talk to a Chuck Widow about putting something on.
I'd be happy.
Do I have any comments from my fellow commissioners? Okay, moving on, then we have an end of session legislative update, and I see some lovely folks here at the table. I'm not sure
I'll
that
just- Yeah, if I could just lead off, and then I'll have Zach and Brian jump in first. So what we thought we would do, as you know, the session just ended. There was a couple of big things that happened that we just talked about. One of them meaning Measure 110. There was also a big housing bill that also went through. So we had the sheriff to talk about 110 and Alyssa to talk about some of the housing legislation. But there was other things that were also happening, and obviously we also have the 2025 session that is already being planned for. AOC is already talking about it, and certainly we've been talking about it with a couple of items, one being the revenue replacement that may be coming as a part of the HCP conversation. The second is the transient lodging tax, which we have a concept that we've shared with your board. I have shared that a little bit more broadly too, just to get feedback. And we know it's going to be a steep hill no matter how it goes, but that's going to be important for the county. We just need more discretion and diversity with our revenue streams as we move forward. So, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to Zach and to Ryan, who can give a little bit more of a general overview of the session, and then we'll have the sheriff and Alyssa talk more specifically about two items. So Zach or Ryan?
I think Zach's going to kick us off. I'll let him start. Hey, everyone.
Not very well, Zach.
No. Okay, let me see if I can get to the spot
That's
here.
much better,
A
actually.
little better. I apologize. I'm in the car right now. So thank you for having us all here today. I apologize. I'm not on camera. I'm in the car, but I know we
Seems like right on cue that he would fall off the meeting. I'll just jump in and he'll catch up. Hello, commissioners. Great to see everyone. I apologize. I was sick earlier this week, and then Zach is traveling at the moment, but wanted to give a quick session overview. And now that Zach's back, I'll let him jump in and interrupt me if I miss anything. So session adjourned on Thursday at about 8:16 p.m. It was kind of fairly a unique short session, at least the closing out of it and some of the big policy packages that they passed. There was a record number of lawmakers not returning either due to walkouts and not being able to file for re-election, retirements, or running for higher office. So that final day of session did stretch kind of late into the evening with prolonged speeches in both of the chambers and some tears. A couple of the big things that happened, and we can talk about how this will kind of change some of the dynamics for things that we're looking to accomplish in future sessions. But the House did elect a new speaker, and that was a surprise to many that the Republican caucus let that happen. So former House Speaker Dan Rayfield is running for higher office, and he's not going to be returning to the House of Representatives. So he opted to step down before session ended to give the chamber an opportunity to vote on his replacement rather than waiting until November, which is when they would traditionally do that. And so the House did focus, they did elect Julie Fahey, a Democrat from the Eugene Springfield area, to replace him. And there's a lot of speculation about different positions that will be opening up on the Senate side and new leaders that will be coming in. Obviously, House Democrats have to elect a new House Majority Leader. There will be likely a new co-chair on the Senate side that could shuffle some things around. So we're going to see some significant leadership change and loss of institutional memory as we go into 2025. Another kind of big policy area that the legislature worked on of note, other than 110 and housing infrastructure investments, was a surprise push on campaign finance reform. That was something that the legislature has been working on for a number of years. And this year there was a legitimate threat at the ballot of two competing measures. So the legislature kind of took some action and passed with bipartisan support a campaign finance measure that honestly no one thought was possible, myself included. So those are some of that was one of the other big policies. I'll let Zach jump in on anything else he was planning to speak about.
No, thank you, Ryan, and my apologies, going through some spotty service here, but no, that just covers it. Ryan did a great job of summarizing it, and we are here to answer any questions if you have them.
Do my fellow commissioners have any questions? No, we don't. It doesn't appear. County Manager?
Sure. So, well, thank you, Zach and Ryan. So what we're going to transition to is a little bit more in-depth conversation about Measure 110 first, if that's okay, Cheryl. And what we just want to talk about is kind of what is it and what are the elements that the county is working on. The county will have to put together a plan, and then there'll be a grant process, is my understanding. And so that is what we'll be rallying around, and it requires participation from certain parts of the provider community, and I'll let the sheriff kind of go through who those are. I think, as I've mentioned before, you know, we have a lot of experience working collaboratively with our partners. And I think I even mentioned at the last board meeting that collaboration and that kind of coordinated muscle movement between entities is going to pay off as we continue to move forward. Measure 110 is one, but there are others. There'll be partnerships on dealing with some of the residential substance abuse facilities, you know, and any number of other issues. And so, so we know how to do this. It's just we have another topic to do it around. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the sheriff.
All right, thank you, Don. Commissioner Bangs, commissioners. House Bill 4002 has several major components. One of the first things that the law addressed was what we call the Boyd-Hubbell fix. That was in respect to a Court of Appeals decision that really changed how we addressed delivery of a controlled substance. So we're talking about dealers. And so basically it returns the law to if you have huge quantities of the drug, packaging material, scales, and all the things that go with selling, that is in fact a delivery. Other things related to dealing is new enhancements for selling within 500 feet of a treatment facility, within 500 feet of a shelter, within public parks. So those are potentially good enhancements. And then Senate Bill 48 really changed pretrial release guidelines, who could stay overnight in jail for arraignment the next day. And so the Chief Justice will review those release guidelines for our delivery and manufacture of controlled substance defendants, arrestees. The next thing it does is it creates an unclassified misdemeanor for possession of a controlled substance. There's kind of three paths through court if you find yourself in that position. If found guilty, you could just take a straight sentence of up to 180 days. The next thing, which I think most people will go for, would be a sentence with probation as a condition. That would be an 18-month probation, where probation officers would have a tool which we call structured sanctions. So maybe you're not complying with your treatment. Maybe you're having problems staying clean. There might be a short jail stay of 2, 3, 4, or 5 days, something like that, to kind of interrupt the cycle that you're finding yourself in, get you back engaged in treatment. And if things are going really bad, I guess the supervisors at community correction would be able to revoke the probation, and then you could go back to jail to serve the rest of your time, a sentence. And that wouldn't be a bad thing, because we have medication assisted treatment in the jail, and we have treatment providers in the jail too. So they would still be getting treatment, which is, I think, the goal of this law. There is the deflection, or what I like to call better, pre-arrangement diversion program. That's optional to counties. It's one that we signed the letter to participate in. And we are starting to work on already. We have a meeting on the 25th with some key stakeholders, including myself. Clatsop Behavioral Health, that'll be Ben Paz, Chris Kino from the Defense Consortium. We have the state courts attending. The first meeting will be very high level. We're just going to talk about, review the law, talk about what other stakeholders, and just, we need to involve and other employees with, who have expertise in certain areas. And we'll just kind of try to make a real rough draft outline of what we want to build, and then figure out our committees or whoever we need to assemble to put this thing together. We've been through something very similar that was just as, or maybe more complex a few years ago, and that was our pretrial release program. Many of the stakeholders are the same. We flew right through that project, and I don't think that we're concerned about putting this one together in record time. This law goes into effect in September. Well, if the governor signs it, I don't believe that's happened yet. Yeah. Part of this is conditional discharge. So if you are found guilty, but you make it through the process, you're eligible to have that removed from your record. We got expungement, similar thing. Deflection program, grant funding. We understand because if we submitted a letter, we'll get half of that money up front. We don't know how much that will be. The total pot of money is 20 million statewide. Anything will help. We'll make it happen. They included in this welfare holds up to 72 hours if someone is incapacitated or a danger to self or others. We don't have a resource for that in our county, but I think it'll be useful in other places. There's $10 million allocated to provide medication assisted treatment in the jails. We're ahead of the pack. We're already doing that thanks to the wonderful partnership with CBH. Again, this is effective September 2024. The House Bill 5204A that went along with this was $211 million total funding. 9.7 million was going to specialty courts. 16 million is community corrections gap funding. So what we've seen is between COVID and some other factors, and of course, defense attorney shortages, all this kind of stuff, less people are coming on to supervision because less cases have been handled. And the cost formula is based on the number of people you're actively supervising at the time. And you can't just fire people and then bring them back, or cut programs and bring them back. It's not that clean, right? But this is gap funding to cover that. Clatsop County's share is going to be about $195,000. Like I said earlier, about $20 million is going towards diversion programs, 10 million for medication assisted treatment programs, and about 85 million statewide for inpatient treatment programs and drop off detox facilities.
Sure. Question.
Yeah.
I sit in meetings and listen to people talk about the public defender crisis. I've just spent a few hours today with colleagues from around the state talking about the need courtroom remodeling and renovation. We've got a little bit coming that's basically just going to give us a secure entryway, which is good, and improve the elevator, which is good. So thanks to you and to Assistant Director Steele, Assistant County Manager Steele, for doing great grant preparation work. When we look at Clatsop County's future and contemplate the effect that we expect these deflection programs to have, do you see gaps in facilities or various parts of the program, like public defenders and I mean, can you talk us through that?
Sure. So you started with the public defender crisis. We are certainly feeling the squeeze here in Clatsop County. I was talking to DA Brown, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he was headed to a meeting with judges to try to resolve more than 80 misdemeanor cases where they were unable to assign a defense attorney. You know, so this could be, you know, fairly significant crimes where someone walked out of Home Depot with $900 of tools, and it's just can't prosecute it because there's no attorney, right?
And if there's no significant consequence, there's no deterrent.
Right, and in this case, really, we're not looking for. I think this law is more about getting people engaged in treatment, and this is a misdemeanor. So if there's not a person to represent them, they can't participate in these processes. Well, I take that back. They could potentially participate in the diversion program because that's pre-arrangement. But not every person's gonna be suited to diversion. So part of our early conversations about this is finding people that we think would be successful in a diversion program. I think that there's risk assessment tools that we can use to help identify who is likely to be successful in the program, because we don't want to put people that are going to be unsuccessful into it, because that'll put a burden on the system, right? But so yeah, there will be some people that probably would not succeed in a diversion program, and we'd steer them towards the courts, because then they'd have supervised probation. And we have the tool with jail also to get people engaged in treatment.
Well, in juvenile justice, they say the least restrictive option, so I assume that that carries over into adult justice as well. What I wonder is, well, the least restrictive option will still get the job done.
Well, I think that, when you talk about laws, there's the thought that there's specific deterrent, and then there's general deterrence, right? So if something is illegal and everyone knows it, and they're afraid to get arrested, that's general deterrence. Yet I will not do that because I'm afraid to get arrested. And then specific deterrence is once you've been caught, was that punishment enough to prevent you from doing it again? And I think we have experience with controlled substances. People find themselves so hopelessly addicted that thought process I described between general and specific deterrence is not part of the equation. So we need to get people treatment.
Commissioner Toyoka, do you still have a question?
Oh, no, actually, I was, my question was about the defense attorney challenges we look at, and then juvenile law. So I think you've addressed both of those.
Excellent, thank you.
Is there anything we can do to help as your county board of commissioners, as your governing body?
Well, I think there will probably be opportunities along the way, but right now it's very early. We don't even know what our shares of this hope are going to be. But what we're going to do is those of us that are working in this space every day are going to put our heads together and start putting together a program, and hopefully there will be enough money to fund it. But I also know that a lot of this services that are going to be required of this, we can already provide. So
Are you cautiously optimistic?
I am.
Okay. That's good for me to hear, because I tend to trust your observations.
Well, I would think, I mean, I think your board knows this, but we're one of the few jails, I believe, that has a medically assisted treatment. And so, you know, the sheriff with his leadership is already doing some of this within the incarcerated facility. And so, and we have really strong partnerships, which certainly help. But this is something new. And at the end of the day, the onus is on, is there going to be sustainable funding to make this really work? You know, so I think that's where the advocacy and others is going to come in, is just, do we have what we need to successfully implement?
In regards to the funding, is it only a year forecast, or is this a biennium funding? Do we have 2
Those
years?
funding
Or
amounts are for the biennium.
for the biennium?
Yeah.
Okay.
We would hope that they would continue to fund it at
Yeah.
appropriate
I
levels.
think there'll be pressure to continue funding, but it's like everything, it has to work. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, so I'm hopeful. I think that might fill some funding gaps potentially for Clatsop County in jail operations. I mean,
Well-
is that a hopeful projection for me to have?
I don't know
I
that
don't think it
it'll,
would help.
yeah, I don't
Would-
think that would
okay.
probably help, but I think that, you know, it'll just further solidify the
need.
the kind of network of support that exists in the county, it's not unlike what has happened with the homeless population. There's a lot more support structure services than there was 5 years ago. And so I think this is another area where there's going to be a lot more of that, which that's what's necessary to really have programs that work. And it's just like all things though, it's, you know, we at the local government level are implementing state policy. And the partnership's only as good as the resources. And so that's just going to be the continual red, you know, yellow flag. It's not red yet, but it's a yellow flag of just, will we get what we need to really do this? Because, you know, there was a lot of issues with Measure 110, and, you know, we're going to have to implement this, learn from it, and hopefully the legislature will stay with us as we do that. Because I'm sure that there's going to be glitches as we implement it, so.
And one more, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
There's a committee, this local government advisory committee, where the directors of the Oregon Health Authority and the Department of Human Services come every month to meet with those county commissioners to talk about state-county partnerships. And if we can work together to make that venue for you to highlight your successes and your concerns and your needs, I think that's a way to enhance that partnership and improve our chances so that your optimism is well founded. You got a venue and a microphone?
Do we have any further questions? Commissioner Webb? Okay. No? Okay.
So, Chair Banks, we'll just go ahead and transition to Alyssa, just to talk a little bit about the housing infrastructure bill. Alyssa.
Okay, well, you guys have heard, certainly that the governor and the legislature were very interested in moving things forward with housing. I want to talk about 3 bills that moved through the legislature. One was, Senate Bill 1537, which perhaps you've heard about. That's the one that, it has 9 different subheadings under it, but the main thing is it created the state's Office of Housing Accountability, the Housing Accountability and Production Office, which is supposed to help local governments overcome barriers to housing development and comply with new state housing law. And that's basically set aside, it's a 2-agency managed department, so it'll be under the Department of Land Conservation and Development and the Department of Consumer and Business Services. So that'll be interesting to see how that department works between the building code side and the land conservation side. So that is the big sort of headline there. And then there were a bunch of regulatory changes. So it modified the statute that allows people who appeal affordable housing decisions to LUBA. If the affordable housing prevails, then attorney's fees have to be paid by the unsuccessful party. It also created the Housing Infrastructure Support Fund, which is basically under the Business Oregon to do infrastructure for housing. So water, stormwater, sewer, et cetera, transportation. It also created a Housing Project Revolving Loan Fund, which is this interesting thing that will involve counties because it will allow basically a tax waiver to make a loan to build housing that then is paid back through the housing project. And so there'll be a lot more conversations about the implementation of this Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund. But the goal here is to actually have a funding source that is for missing middle housing. The state OHCS has quite a bit of funding for low income housing, and obviously market rate is its own thing, but this is targeted at that sort of middle income housing that there really isn't public funding for. It also allows local governments some flexibility on granting adjustments. So things like parking or setbacks or building code. Now local governments will have a little bit more opportunity to do what they want to do, and they can go to the Housing Accountability and Production Office and get forgiveness or permission, whichever one needs to be done. And then probably you've also heard that it is providing this 1537 allows for one-time emergency additions to the urban growth boundary for housing. And it is for cities with populations under 25,000, it limits these additions to 50 net residential acres. So it's not a huge amount, but it basically is trying to say that if land is the barrier to housing production, then here is an expedited way to get additional land ready for housing. So that's kind of the upside of 1537. Senate Bill 1530 is the bill that really has all of the funding and appropriations in it. And so multiple agencies got a bunch of money, and Oregon Housing and Community Services got things like $65 million more for emergency shelter, $40 million for eviction prevention, $10 million for land acquisition for affordable housing, $5 million for individual development accounts, and $2 million for people who are whose mobile home parks are getting sold or closed. And then there's $100 million for infrastructure for housing. The Oregon Health Authority is getting 18 million for recovery housing and for the Healthy Homes Repair Fund. The Department of Human Services is getting $2 million for emergency warming or cooling shelters. And then the State Department of Energy is going to do the residential heat pump funds. People need air conditioning. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is House Bill 4134, which is project-specific infrastructure funding for housing. So a lot of us work together, AOC, LLC, put together a list of potential housing projects. It totaled far more than the amount allocated. But at the end of the day, there was $21.9 million allocated to about 10 cities, none of which are in Clatsop County. Our friends in Lincoln County got a little something. And those are all things like road improvements, water, sewer, utility, that are shovel-ready housing projects ready to go. And so hopefully there will be more of that to come in the future that we'll be able to be in line for, but those are the three big housing bills that passed. So we will see how these things start moving forward.
Thank you. I'm leaping here.
No.
Well, because that's the advantage of sitting on LCDC right now, is that they're in conversation with the director. So maybe you want to give me your cheat sheet, and maybe you want to give me specific questions to ask her about how this can be better for us, since we were blessed with some means to do programs, but there's room for more. So if you can help me with them.
Well, I think part of it too is that, some of these requests are not county, they're from the city. And that's where, these are not county requests, these are city requests, and just the cities weren't ready to make those requests. And so, so that's something that we will continually coordinate with them and try to help them
Get ready.
be as ready as they can. And as we always know, it's oftentimes it's just timing. I mean, it's just, you have some plans, but you're just not quite there. And so I think that hopefully there will be some additional infrastructure dollars, and hopefully we can rally and get some of the cities ready for some of those grant opportunities. So.
They're happy to tell me no on any number of occasions, but if there's something that we can ask for that results in a yes, I'm going to move things forward.
I will mention Senate Bill 1564, which actually allocates $550,000 to the LCDC, to the Land Conservation and Development Commission, to adopt 3 sets of model codes for housing. And those are for cities under 5,000, cities, it's under 2,500, 2,500 to 25,000, and then 25,000 above. And so that will be you looking at the model codes, and then those will be things that we will be able to bring to our cities to help them do that. So we're counting on you for that.
Well, what I hope what you do is brief me so that I'm informed and can present what a reasonable commissioner would have to say about the impact of this on the ground, and any ways to improve it that we see that they haven't already noted.
Absolutely. We care about local government capacity and making it as easy as possible for our local governments to do what they can.
Yeah. Well, because fundamentally, we want people to be in housing. And how do we do that? And I'm thinking of, we're talking about deflection. Well, we've got to have housing for therapists. How do we do that?
And I think, Commissioner, this is just where there's a lot of, discussion that needs and currently is taking place between cities and the county, because as we know, I mean, the view of the state, the view of land use is that housing belongs in cities. And so, that's gonna be our continual coordination with them. And then as much as we can advocate for that, that's what our role, is to advocate on their behalf and to do what we can in the unincorporated areas, which we are, by taking a look at our code and saying, what are some of the barriers from, of us still facilitating housing units within the unincorporated areas. So I think we're doing a lot. I think the cities are generally overwhelmed. And there's just, as we've talked about before, there's just a lot of unique barriers for the North Coast that don't exist in a lot of areas, and that limits the opportunity, and it makes it more expensive. And so there's just things that are continually challenge us. But the good news is we all talk, we have the housing task force, we're doing planning through a grant. So there's a lot of good things happening, but yeah, it's a challenge.
Commissioner Webb has a question.
Yeah, I think that a topic that the county manager and I have spoken about often is this whole issue of because of our UGB system in Oregon for land use planning. I've actually probably for the last 20 years been wishing that we had done something that was a something in between a city and a county, and something between a city and an unincorporated area. I think that's a weak part. I think it's one of the few weaknesses that we have in Senate Bill 100. And unlike most other states, land use systems, we don't have a sort of a system of having towns or townships or smaller parts of counties, and what that has done to especially rural counties in Oregon is that it hasn't done long-term planning for infrastructure for different densities of housing. And so I think it would be very exciting if if we could be at the forefront of talking about those issues, because I think it's a real hindrance in rural counties in Oregon, especially actually, I see the biggest problem being in Eastern Oregon, where there's really, there are counties in Eastern Oregon that have so few cities, that and the distances are so great, and there's no real provision for that urbanization component. And I don't know, maybe Don, you could give a lecture to the board, which I definitely want you to put in the book you're going to write when you retire, about urbanization in different levels of density in counties. Because I was in Bend at a conference last fall, and they're really being largely impacted by water systems, and where they have large farms that they have to provide water for. Just a lot of it's mostly infrastructure issues, but it's also a local government structure issue. And I think it's something that that I'd love to see us talking about. And I don't want to wait until the county manager retires and writes that chapter in his book. I think we need to get on it. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Webb, what I will say is that I will talk with Gail when she gets back in the office next week, and we will put a placeholder on the revolving calendar to start that conversation.
Excellent point. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Webb.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. County manager, do we have anything further to discuss?
I don't have anything else. No. Sure, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, well then I say let's take a break until 6 p.m. I will call this regular session of the Board of Commissioners for March 13th, 2024 to session. The Board of Commissioners, as a governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. And we will begin with our flag salute. Teresa, could you go ahead and start with the roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Quayla,
Is excused.
thank you. Vice Chair Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Toyoka,
Here?
Commissioner Webb,
Here.
and Commissioner Thompson. I'm here.
Excellent, thank you. As we've all had a chance to take a look at the agenda, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, move to adopt the agenda as presented, please.
I'll second that.
Has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the proclamation for the American Red Cross Month. We have Jeannie Mushin present, I think.
I'm here.
To go ahead and present for us. Jeannie,
Hi.
go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. We so thankfully thank you for adopting this proclamation for the American Red Cross. As you know, we don't only work on disasters. One of the campaigns that we have right now is Sound the Alarm, which is pretty important. We installed free smoke detectors for people that need it. So I want to make sure that you guys know that we are here. And then if you know of anybody that needs any smoke detectors, just please reach out to us and we will make sure that they get that. And that's one of the things that we do when we have blue skies. So again, thank you for your time and for doing this proclamation.
Again, thank you so much for coming this evening.
Yes.
I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming March to be American Red Cross Month and authorizing the chair to read and then sign the proclamation.
I'll second that.
Has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Okay. As the vice chair, I will go ahead and read and then sign the proclamation. The Board of County Commissioners for Clatsop County, Oregon, in the matter of proclaiming the period from March 1st through March 31st, 2024 to be Red Cross Month. Whereas during American Red Cross Month in March, we recognize the compassion of people in Clatsop County and reaffirm our commitment to care for one another in times of crisis. Whereas this generous spirit is woven into the fabric of our community and advances the humanitarian legacy of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, one of the most honored women in our country's history, who nobly dedicated herself to alleviating suffering. Whereas kind-hearted individuals in our community exemplify Barton's commitment as they step through Oregon and Southwest Washington to provide a beacon of hope for our neighbors in need. Whereas through voluntary and selfless contributions, Red Cross volunteers make a life-saving difference in people's darkest hours, whether it's delivering shelter, food, and comfort during disasters, providing critical blood donations for hospital patients, supporting military families, veterans, and caregivers through the unique challenges of service, saving lives with first aid, CPR, and other skills, or delivering aid and reconnecting loved ones separated by global crisis. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the month of March as American Red Cross Month in Clatsop County and honors all those who lead with their hearts to serve people in need. We encourage everyone to join in this commitment to strengthen our community and invite community members to celebrate the significant contributions and humanitarian mission of the American Red Cross, dated
this 13th day of March 2024. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, if I could just say one more thing.
Yes, go right ahead.
My apologies for not being there. I really wanted to be there, but today we have Cannon Beach Food Pantry, and I'm the only one that can translate. And my apologies. I just literally walked into my office to make this call, so thank you for understanding.
Oh, definitely no problem, and thank you for being here to share with us. Okay. We will be moving on to business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Okay. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak?
No, there are not.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on then to our consent calendar. Has everyone had a moment to peruse the consent calendar? I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, move to adopt the consent calendar.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent calendar. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent, so moved. Let's go ahead and begin with our commissioners' reports. Commissioner Webb, we'll start with you this evening.
Thank you. I actually have very little to report because I have been in bed with a terrible cold for several weeks now. I would like to mention, though, that the Northwest Oregon Workforce Board, on which I sit, has elected me to chair the consortium part of that board, which is the elected commissioners from the 5 counties. And I guess that will officially be done at our next meeting in a couple of weeks. Other than that, I have caught up on a lot of things, but still have a lot of things to catch up on. So thank you for their patience.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb, and we hope that you feel better soon. Commissioner Toyoka.
Good evening, everyone. I'm in a challenging position to talk, so I will save my comments for the next meeting.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And congratulations, Commissioner Webb, on that acknowledgement from your colleagues. I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about some of the activities that I do. One of them is to co-chair the Governance and Revenue Committee for the Association of Oregon Counties. We call it the Nerds Committee, and we call it the Cool Nerds Committee, because this is where we talk about the bigger issues. I'm going to read for you the report I gave to the Legislative Committee and the board Monday at AOC from the Governance and Revenue Committee. We met virtually the Friday before. 40 people attended, heard an update from AOC staff about progress on our priority for the 24th session, as well as other governance, revenue, and economic development bills, the summary of those. The first one was the House Bill 4056, which was the Tyler versus Hennepin County decision. What we were trying to do was to limit county legal liability in cases of foreclosure, create a standard process for how foreclosure surplus claims are handled. There was a lot of negotiation about this. The result in the bill that passed was there was a pause on counties taking any deeds through foreclosure until the end of 2025, and the Department of Revenue is going to convene meetings with county representatives and interested parties about what a claims process should look like. Counties will be participating in that. That process begins in June, in a few months. The second bill was SB 1576. That was recreational immunity. We had some problems there because our recreational community was significantly compromised. We have a stopgap measure until the end of 2025, so trails can reopen, the public can recreate. That's a good thing. The third thing was Senate Bill 1575. This was a bill about design professionals and who should assume the liability for suits arising from design professionals' activities. It wasn't a terribly happy outcome because what happened was, beginning January 1st, 2025, public bodies, according to Senate Bill 1575, will be prohibited from protecting themselves from liability for design defects when contracting with architects, engineers, and land surveyors. We lost in the legislature. We are asking the governor to veto this bill. Probably not, but we're going to keep until the very end. The fourth bill was Senate Bill 1526-9. This is an issue about providing a benefit for veterans. It gets involved, anybody who's been involved with BOPTA will understand that it got very complicated very quickly. It involves the recalculation of the maximum assessed values around property tax breaks for veterans and active duty military members. We're not there yet, so we'll keep going on that. That's the kind of thing that happens in both the AOC meetings and at the legislature, working on behalf of Clatsop County and other counties. We also had a local government advisory committee, meeting on Friday, February 23rd. I'd recommend you to that local government advisory, LGAC we call it, is a place where the directors of the Oregon Health Authority and the Department of Human Services come together to form better partnerships with counties. That's a good thing to do, and if you want to know more about that, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I also wanted to mention that Saturday night, I got to go with my sweet husband down to Albany because the Albany Chamber of Commerce gave Distinguished Service Awards banquets. And Roger Nyquist, the chair of the Lynn County Board of Commissioners, got a legacy award presentation, and it's just very touching. We have our own wonderful ceremonies like that, but it's nice to know they happen other places as well. The final couple of things I want to talk about. When we look at governance and we look at revenue, for me, I'm thinking about the habitat conservation plan and the impact that the decrease in our revenue in Clatsop County, which will be more negatively impacted by this HCP than any other county in the state of Oregon. It seems to me that there's a larger conversation to be had, and the Governance and Revenue Committee at the Association of Oregon Counties is the place to have it. So I hope that my colleagues will come from all over the state and we can look at how do we pay for the services that we want to have in Oregon. We'll be having that larger conversation. The other thing is governance. When we look at special districts and the role they play in providing public services in Oregon, they're not, I would say, as completely incorporated into governance structures and accountability as municipal or other forms of government. So we're going to be looking at that as well, because when the governor has a housing plan that calls for the building of a lot of housing, we need roads, we need fresh water, we need wastewater. Those are all often handled by special districts. So we want to look at those governance issues. And then the final thing, Madam Chair, the Department of Land Conservation and Development is going to be very busy in the next biennium. there's a lot more I could say about that. I will just say stay tuned because there are more details to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson, and I am grateful that you have a front row seat to some of those big decisions that are going to be upcoming. I will go ahead and start my report with, as we all heard and saw, the Habitat Conservation Plan has been moved forward. I had an interesting conversation with the state forester on February 1st? No, March 1st, February 29th. I'm in the wrong month. Woo. Back in March, with the state forester, invited by Colpack. And I appreciated that invitation. It was a pretty candid conversation with him. Now that the HCP has been passed forward, by the Board of Forestry, it is now pushed into Federal Services' hands. And it is up to Federal Services to present a legally defensible HCP in this process. And I asked him a pretty pointed question within that conversation, and I said, can Federal Services decide potentially if there has been too much change that has occurred from the time that this HCP was written until the time that it is passed, with the ever development of new modeling and new, or fewer, I guess you could say, concerns on the landscape? Would that potentially put this through another draft EIS period, another public comment period? And he supported my observation by saying, yes, they have that ability to put this HCP through another draft EIS and public comment period, if it is so deemed that there has been a great enough amount of change from the time that it was originally written until the point that now it's in Federal Services' hands. And then my second question, because I'm always lobbying for Clatsop County and a better outlook for us, I said, well, if we have that time, can we make changes? And he chuckled, and he didn't give me a solid yes/no answer. But I think that the potential of another draft EIS is possible. I am hopeful for it. I do believe that we have surpassed the number of changes from the time it was released till now, that it should be put through another scoping process, or not a scoping process, but another review process, with the updated information. I think that that's only fair because of the cost that is associated with this plan, and the exponential social impacts that are going to be associated with the plan. So, to be continued. Next up on our agenda is the Forest Management Plan. There were burblings at the Board of Forestry meeting about using the Forest Management Plan to hopefully alleviate some of the negative consequences of the HCP. So we will, again, to be continued. I will always be hopeful, I think. We rescheduled our Child Care Task Force, rescheduled our interviews for April. We wanted to make sure that the person that would be supervising the individual would be present for those interviews, and so we're waiting for her to be present before we move forward. We do have 3 to 4 good candidates, so I'm excited about that. And pushing into last week, for testimony, for the first time, I think, in almost a decade, so the CSTLC commissioners, the board of CSTLC, we each took 3 minutes of the testimony period that CSTLC is able to be had. Traditionally, that is the chair and the vice chair that take that space, but both our chair and vice chair chose to share that space with all of the counties that were going to be impacted by the HCP. I thought that that was a pretty wonderful display of joint concern. And I hope actually that we as commissioners are invited to do that and share that space more in the future, because it makes it less about one specific county or another specific county. It makes it more about the 14 counties. So that was nice. That was a good faith effort to kind of show a joint concern. Northwest Senior and Disability Services, we just had some housekeeping meetings most recently, nothing to report there. Fair Board meeting, it looks like, hopefully, I'm almost positive the contract's been signed for Joe Nichols. Nope, not shaking a head. Abort mission, I said nothing. Almost. We are so close. We are so close. It'll be exciting. So hopefully, all of that gets wrapped up, and they are very excitedly filling the agenda for fair. It's busy. Let's just put it that way. It's very busy. So other than that, I have nothing else to report. Moving on to county managers' reports.
Thank you, Chair Banks, members of the board. On the heels of your board's approval of the Georgia Pacific SIP, the Oregon Business Development Commission has scheduled their consideration for April 5th. And so I'll be participating in that virtually just to answer any questions that the commission might have, and Georgia Pacific reps will also be on the meeting for the same purpose. Besides that, it's, we're in collective bargaining with 2 unions. We're in the throes of the budget process. And so we continue to move forward on those. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is some public hearings. We have continuation of Ordinance 2411, Southwest Coastal Community Plan on page 14. This is a continuation of the public hearing on Ordinance 2411. Because key staff members are not available for tonight's hearing, staff has requested a continuation of this public hearing to March 27th board meeting. I would entertain a motion, or is there any discussion, I guess? Oh.
Yeah, you have to just open the public
Oh,
hearing.
I do? Okay. Kidding. I knew I was gonna mess up public hearing. Okay, so. Is there any do I start there? Okay. Is there any additional information from staff?
Not at this time.
Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not,
Um,
and not in person either.
okay. And I will close the public hearing. And now I will entertain a motion or discussion first. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve ordinance 24-13.
Sorry. We're continuing the
We're gonna continue. Motion to.
Page 14, Commissioner.
This is public contracting.
Yeah, we're on page 14, Commissioner.
I'm ready for 15. Okay. Well, all right then. So I move that the board continue the second public hearing of ordinance 24-11 to the March 27, 2024 regular meeting. See, you're not the only one.
I
who
would
can-
second that.
It has been moved and seconded, to continue, oh, I can't read it, to continue this hearing to the March 27th board meeting. 24-11 to the March 27th, 2024 regular meeting. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay. Next item on the agenda, let's see if I can get it right this time. Okay, next item on our agenda is update public Clatsop County Code 1.04060, public contracting rules. This is a continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 2413, update to public Clatsop County Code 1.04060, public contracting rules. May we have the second reading by title only?
This is ordinance number 24-13 in the matter of an ordinance amending Clatsop County Code Section 1.04.00 Local Contract Review Board.
Is there any additional information from staff?
There's not.
Okay. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely,
No, there are not.
in person?
No, there are not.
Okay. I will close this public hearing. And is there any discussion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Take two. Madam Chair, I move to approve ordinance 24-13.
Second the motion.
Is there a second? Excellent. There is a motion and a second to approve ordinance 24-13. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Excellent. So that brings us to the end of our agenda this evening.
Ooh, Madam Chair.
Ooh, yes.
Under good of the order, I see a packet here from the Soil and Water Conservation District. County Manager, do you have anything to suggest for how we deal with this?
I haven't seen that, Commissioner, so.
So then there would be nothing. We just had a packet that appeared, and I wanted to not miss the chance to do something with it if we were able to do that.
It's something they turn in annually. It's their budget.
Okay.
So it's just your annual report from them.
This will be routine. We will.
No paper unturned. Okay.
No, yep, excellent. Is there any other items for the good of the order? Hearing and seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.
There's more.
Okay.